When it comes to Kawaki, the guy, he's a consequentialist. As long as his actions give him the intended outcome, he doesn't care what line he has to cross. However, as a character who has done quite a few foul and questionable things, it makes you wonder how long Kawaki would go to jail if he was made to stand trial for all of his actions. Join me in today's newest installment of the Naruto True Crime series / Naruto's Most Wanted series, where we take a look at every crime that Naruto characters have carried out and determine what their prison sentence would be if they were made to stand trial in Japan and made to answer for all of their crimes, which obviously means we'll be using the Japanese legal system for reference. And in the case of life imprisonments and death penalties, we're going to swap those out with a jail sentence of the average lifespan of a Japanese male, which would be 81 years old. We'll do all that at the end of the video to calculate everything. Obviously, if you want to see me do more Naruto characters, leave your suggestion down below. And if you want to see me do the same for other anime characters, subscribe to my Anime Explained channel where I cover non-Naruto content. Now for Kawaki, we're going to be using what he did in the manga for Boruto Naruto Next Generations and Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. So if it happened in the anime, we're not using it for this video. So using the Japanese legal system as a basis, let's go through Kawaki's crimes and estimate a likely sentence based on the equivalent offenses under Japanese law. And because we don't know Kawaki's true age, it was never stated anywhere, we're just going to judge him like he's an adult. Though where it is applicable, I will mention some of the ways that he could be treated as a minor. So starting things off, we have verbal threats against Boruto on Team 7. That would count as criminal intimidation. That would be under Japanese Penal Code Article 222. The penalty for this would be 2 years imprisonment or a fine of up to 300,000 yen. This occurred when Kawaki first debuts in the manga. Also, when he killed Goro, this would be murder. That would be under Penal Code Article 199. The penalty would be 5 years minimum and up to life imprisonment or the death penalty. If self-defense was considered here, it might reduce the charge to injury resulting from death, which carries a 3 years imprisonment sentence at a bare minimum. Now, destroying the cliff and the surrounding area with this chakra blast, that would count as property damage. The penalty for this would be 3 years imprisonment because technically that is land owned by the Land of Fire. Also, attempting to escape Naruto's custody as a Hokage assigned guardian. There's no direct law on this, as an escape from crime usually applies to those who are under official detention. However, obstructing a public official would apply here. That penalty is up to 3 years in prison and a fine of 500,000 yen. Knocking over Naruto's dinner table and attempting to flee yet again. If considered intentional property damage, which it was, then it would be Article 261. This is likely a minor offense and it could be settled with a fine or restitution. Also, breaking the flower vase that Himawari made for Hinata. This would be property damage under Article 261. This is also a fine rather than jail time. Now, the attempted assault on Boruto while they were peeing outside, this would be attempted assault, and the penalty for this would be up to 2 years in prison. Now, attempting to kill the kid who bumped into him, this would also count as murder. This would be Penal Code Article 203, and this would be up to a life imprisonment. Now, attempting to attack Jigen inside of Naruto's home, since Jigen was an abusive guardian and he had attacked Naruto, self-defense could apply here, so it's likely not a chargeable offense, though Jigen's lawyers probably are going to argue elsewhere. So there's also breaking house arrest that is imposed by Shikamaru because he was the acting Hokage. So this would be a violation of administrative order. This would be a fine and also 30 days of detention. Now, aggravated assault of Boro is the next one, and this would be under Penal Code Article 204. The penalty for this is up to 15 years of imprisonment. Yes, Boro was a bad guy, but Boro lives matter, people. Also, attempting to murder Boro is another one. This would be under Article 203 for attempted murder. This is also up to life imprisonment. Now, breaking into the interrogation room that Naruto, Sasuke, and Shikamaru were interrogating Amado, this would be unlawful entry into a government building. This would be unlawful entry. this would be Penal Code Article 103. The penalty for this is up to 3 years of imprisonment. Also, the attempted murder of Amado, this would be attempted murder under Article 203. This is also up to life imprisonment. Now, there are more additional crimes and legal consequences for Kawaki. He's not done yet. As you can see, he's been a very busy boy. Grabbing Amado by the shirt while speaking to him aggressively, that would be intimidation. That's up to 2 years in prison and a 300,000 yen fine. Also, killing Ishiki despite these self-defense circumstances, this would be murder because he did think about how to do it. That is a minimum of 5 years in prison up to life imprisonment or the death penalty. Now, if you can argue Kawaki had self-defense here, then he might not be charged. But again, Ishiki's lawyers, they might want to have a word because Ishiki was technically Kawaki's guardian. Now, the assault on Momoshiki while controlling Boruto's body. This would be assault. This would be Penal Code Article 208. This would be 2 years in prison and a fine. Nearly slashing Sarada in their sparring match. This would be aggravated assault, and this would be 15 years in prison. Yes, Kawaki said that he was not going to kill her, but he would have inflicted serious damage to her. Then you have choking out Amado in the lab in Boruto Volume 15. This would be assault under Article 208. This would be 2 years in prison and a fine. Shouting in the street a few chapters later, this would also be public disturbance, which would be disturbing the peace. This would be 30 days in jail and a 10,000 yen fine. Escaping surveillance from Naruto's home. This would be an obstruction of official duties. This would be 3 years in prison and a fine. Leaving the Hidden Leaf Village without permission, which is a violation of administrative orders. This would be detainment for an undisclosed amount of time and a fine. Assaulting Code before Code attacked him. Since Kawaki was technically the aggressor here, Code literally said, "I just came to talk to you." This would be assault, Article 208. This would be 2 years in prison and a fine. Attempting to murder Code. This would be under Article 208 of the Penal Code, which is life in prison. Then you have defying direct orders from Naruto the Hokage. This would be a obstruction of authority. This would give him a fine and a 30-day detention. Also, murdering Boruto, even with Boruto's consent, this would still be murder. So this would be under Article 199. This would be a minimum of 5 years given the circumstances or up to life in prison. Boruto said, "Hey, kill me, bro," but he still killed a Konoha citizen. Now, a second attempted murder of Code would be attempted murder under Article 203, that is up to life imprisonment. Now, choking Boruto during their argument in Chapter 77, this would be assault under Article 208. This would be up to 2 years imprisonment or a fine. Now, leaving the safe house while under surveillance, that is also a violation of administrative orders. This would be a fine and 30 days in prison. Now, entering into Naruto's home without permission, this would be unlawful entry under Penal Code Article 130. This would be 3 years imprisonment. Though Naruto's a good guy, he probably would not charge him, but we're going to assume that Hinata wants justice. Now, threatening to kill Boruto again, this time telling Naruto, "I'm going to kill your son and make sure he stays dead." This would be criminal intimidation. That would be 2 years in prison. Sealing away Naruto and Hinata, which is the equivalent of kidnapping. That would be unlawful confinement under Penal Code Article 220. That's up to 7 years in prison. You could have even higher charges if you consider the fact that Naruto's a Hokage. Now, the assault on Boruto on the Hokage monument, this would be assault under Article 208. That would be 2 years of imprisonment. Now, damaging the Hokage monument, since they're fighting on the top of it, and damaging the ground around it, then that's property damage of a government site. That is 3 years that Kawaki would be placed in jail. Now, attempting to murder Boruto again, this would be another attempted murder, and this would be up to life in prison. Now, attempting to murder Boruto and Sarada, this is a attempted double murder. This would be up to life in prison. This would be the fight that they had in Chapter 78 or Chapter 79 of Boruto. Now, slashing Boruto's eye, that is a permanent injury. that would be aggravated assault under Article 204, which is 15 years in prison. Now, also refusing to cooperate with Shikamaru's interrogation, that is a obstruction of justice. That is a fine and 30 days in prison. Now, escaping captivity from Shikamaru, Sasuke, and Mitsuki, that is escape from detainment, and that is a year in jail. Now, also evading Konoha shinobi who are hunting him, that is a obstruction of official duties. Under Article 95, that would get him 3 years in prison. Now, accidentally causing Ada to use omnipotence, which you could charge for identity theft as an equivalent because it is a unauthorized identity alteration. It's unlikely to be chargeable, but it is morally gray. We're going to give Kawaki a pass for identity theft for this instance. Now, the other thing, physically threatening Ada to reveal Naruto's death status despite Naruto being alive, that is intimidation, and that's under Article 222. That's 2 years in jail. Masterminding the false belief that Naruto is dead, that is spreading false information. That will get you 3 years of jail time in Japan. Now, framing Boruto for murder, that's defamation. Under Penal Code Article 230, that's 3 years in jail. Making everyone believe that Hinata was dead, the equivalent of a first lady, that's also spreading false information, and that will be 3 years in prison. Framing Boruto for Hinata's murder, that's also defamation under Article 230, and that is 3 years in jail. Planning to kill Boruto in code, that's criminal conspiracy, that would lead to an undisclosed prison sentence. Since he's only planning it and not carrying it out, the bare minimum is 30 days in jail. Threatening to kill Damon in chapter 80, that is criminal intimidation, Article 222. He flat out says in that chapter, I will kill you too. That is 2 years in prison just for that threat alone. Now, when we get into the 3-year time skip known as Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, we got even more crimes that have been carried out. So the additional crimes and legal consequences would be continuing to blame Boruto for the murder of Naruto and Hinata 3 years later while benefiting from omnipotence effects which make people think that he is Naruto's son. That's defamation. Penal Code Article 230, that is 3 years in prison and a fine. Verbally telling Boruto that he would kill him. Boruto escaped before the fight would even begin. That is criminal intimidation. Penal Code Article 222, that's 2 years in jail and a fine. Another failed attempt to kill Boruto using chakra rods, which are the equivalent of swords. That is attempted murder. Under Penal Code Article 203, that is anywhere from 15 years to life in prison. Yet another attempted murder of Boruto by using physical force, this time in that same chapter. That's attempted murder under Article 203, 15 years to life in prison. Murdering Hidari, who while he was in Konoha illegally, he was still defenseless at the time, could not fight back. That would count as murder, and under Penal Code Article 199, that is a minimum of 5 years given the circumstances, up to life imprisonment or the death penalty. Because remember, people, Hidari lives matter. Shinju lives matter. Purposely allowing Boruto to be arrested despite Boruto being innocent. That is a wrongful arrest. Under Penal Code Article 172, that is a 10-year imprisonment. Openly gloating to Ada and Damon that Boruto will be executed for a crime that he didn't commit and waiting for Konoha to finish their interrogation before executing him. That is conspiracy to commit judicial murder. If Boruto had been executed, keyword if, then Kawaki would have gotten life in prison. Now, lying to Konoha's government to frame an innocent person, Boruto, that is perjury, and that is a false accusation. So under Penal Code Articles 169 and 172, that would be 10 years in prison. Now, lying to the other nations on the continent, that makes it an international crime. So the Sand Village, the Stone Village, the Mist Village, the Cloud Village, that is international fraud and that is misinformation. There would be diplomatic sanctions and possible life imprisonment if the consequences were severe. And given it's a waste of resources having people hunt down Boruto, he'd get life in prison. Now, choking Amado, yet again, when demanding that he gets his limiters removed, that will be assault under Penal Code Article 208. That will be 2 years in prison or a fine. Forcing Amado to experiment on his body for the sake of gaining more power, that is coercion, and that would be under Penal Code Article 223, that is 3 years in prison. Now, plotting to kill Boruto in code yet again, using the power that he gained from Amado's forced experiments on his body, that is conspiracy to commit murder under the Penal Code Article 60 and under Article 203. So he'd be charged with conspiracy and conspiracy to commit murder. That would be 15 years to life in prison. Threatening to kill Amado's daughter if she became a problem. Basically, she became an Otsutsuki. His daughter is an adult. That is criminal intimidation under Article 222. That would be 2 years in prison. See, don't you love Konoha? Even Otsutsuki have rights. So here are the prison sentences for Kawaki. So first, we're going to say if the prison sentences run consecutively, full punishment, it's 250 plus years to life imprisonment or the death penalty. Now, if the sentences run concurrently, which is common in Japan, it's likely 50 years to life imprisonment. Now, for what you really want to know, given Kawaki's escalating actions, his punishments will be one of the harshest in Konoha history and in real life one of the harshest in history, with near certain life imprisonment sentences, potential execution under Japanese law. If we take all of this and we say that for every life sentence was 81 years and every death penalty was 81 years, he would break down like this. The total number of years in jail for the lesser crimes would be 290. The total life sentences would be 8. The total death penalties would be 3. But when you add in the 8 total life sentences and the 3 total death sentences, and you multiply that by 81, that gives Kawaki 1,181 years in jail. So if Kawaki was sentenced to jail in Konoha, it'd be 1,181 years in total. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and checking out more videos from Naruto Explained by clicking here on the left, or click up top for this video from my One Piece channel, or click over here on the right for this video on my Anime Explained channel.